Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story.
Oh, police! Show me your hand!
The split-second decision to shoot dead a driver behind the wheel. Now the officer who pulled the trigger is found not guilty of murder. Kaba was killed by a marksman trying to protect London, says his boss. The victim's family say the verdict left a deep pain of injustice. Tonight, London's mayor says the killing caused the capital's communities anger, pain and fear. He also praises the police officers who put themselves in harm's way. Also tonight, reform, but not yet, is the government's prescription for the NHS, as it calls on staff and the public to provide ideas to cure it.
Give us what you stole from us! Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people! You destroyed our lives!
The King confronted over the crimes of the past as an Australian Aboriginal senator accuses him of genocide. The pictures that appear to show Palestinian men being rounded up and separated from women and children in Gaza. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. An Old Bailey jury took just 3.5 hours today to acquit the police marksman accused of murdering 24-year-old Chris Kaba. The reverberations of that acquittal, though, may last much longer. The country's most senior officer, Metropolitan Police Commissioner Mark Rowley, said the system holding police to account was broken and risked crushing the spirit of good officers. The family of the victim, though, said the verdict was devastating and showed his life didn't matter to the system. We'll hear more from Chris Kaba's family in a moment. But first, on the verdict, here's our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt.
On to New Park Road, continuing southbound, then past, what's your ETA?
30 seconds.
Through South London, a convoy of police cars followed the suspect's Audi Q8. It had been linked to a shooting the night before.
Standing by for strikes, stand by, stand by.
When it turned into a side street, police launched a plan to stop it and remove the driver.
On to Coastal Gardens. Do it here, it's in line.
Oh, police! Show me your hands!
Boxed in, surrounded by armed police, the driver, Chris Kaba, 24, and a father-to-be.
Show me your hands!
He rammed the Audi forwards.
Stop the car! Stop the car!
Officers' body-worn cameras and dashcam footage caught the speed, the noise and the drama of what was happening.
Watch yourself.
Police smashed 2 of the car's windows.
Mind them, he's going to try and go.
The Audi rammed backwards into a police car. As it stopped, an officer fired 1 shot. The jury was shown a graphics version of the movement of the firearms officers. Martin Blake is the yellow dot. He ends up in front of the suspect's car from where he takes the fatal shot. The officer said he feared the car would hit and kill one of his colleagues. His shot hit the driver in the forehead and killed him. The jury acquitted him of murder. Chris Kaba had no weapon on him. It wasn't his car. His family spoke of their deep sense of injustice. On the day after the shooting, they had said as much.
The report said that it was a pursuit. Where was the pursuit? He was boxed in. The pursuit where? You know, and why did they shoot him in his vehicle with the windows up? I don't get it.
Police!
In London and elsewhere, campaigners looked for an explanation. 2 years later, Mr. Kaba's parents were at the Old Bailey to watch their son's killer in the dock. A rare thing, a firearms officer charged with murder. A court ban on his image, but not his name, Martin Blake, aged 40. In court, the prosecutor said the officer had no reason to fire his gun. He had given false statements and exaggerated the danger. Mr. Kaba said the prosecutor had ignored police shouts to stop, and that made the officer angry, frustrated and annoyed. The officer told the jury he felt none of that. He was filled with dread, he said, because the driver was trying to use his car to escape. He thought one of his colleagues was about to die, so he fired to incapacitate the driver and stop the car. After the verdict, the Met Commissioner called for better legal protection for firearms officers.
No police officer is above the law, but we have been clear that the system holding police to account is broken. I worry about the lack of support officers face for doing their best. But most of all, I worry for the public. The more we crush the spirit of good officers, the less they can fight crime.
Tony Long is one of 4 on-duty officers in recent times to be tried for murder or manslaughter. He shot dead a suspect in North London nearly 20 years ago. He was acquitted.
We ask those police officers to look after us. And so if we train them to use these varying degrees of force, ending up potentially with lethal force, then I think we should be not cutting them some slack, but we should have a better understanding. And you can't just automatically say, well, that police officer shot someone, and then go, well, charge him with murder.
The jury has delivered its verdict on the shooting of Chris Kaba, but the debate over the police use of lethal force will continue. Martin Brunt, Sky News, at the Old Bailey.
Well, Chris Kaba's family said tonight that the jury's verdict left a deep pain of injustice. Their campaign after the killing of the 24-year-old saw thousands march in protest, and prominent figures like the rapper Stormzy promote their case. Our correspondent Shingi Mararike reports now on the reaction to the jury's decision.
After the verdict, the anger. Hundreds of protesters outside the Old Bailey on a day a family and a community feel the justice system has failed them. Chris Kaba's cousin had these words outside court on behalf of his parents.
Chris was stolen from us, and this decision shows his life and many others like him doesn't matter to the system. Our son deserved better. The acquittal of Martin Blake isn't just a failure for our family, but for all those affected by police violence.
Those feelings shared by people here who say they are tired.
We've been here so often, but you think there might be a taste of justice or a taste of being treated equally, and then it's snatched away again.
The systems that are set up for accountability are failing. They're failing woefully, and there's nothing being done.
Until justice is served to this family and until the police state across the UK nationally is abolished, we will be here and we will be on the streets.
The fury of the group gathered here isn't just about a not guilty verdict after a day of deliberation. They feel it's about years of systemic racism that they will continue to protest against.
Concerns the MP for the area the shooting took place says she can understand.
We have to respect legal processes. However, we do also have to respect the fact that the CPS thought that there was enough evidence to bring a murder charge. It's absolutely right that when somebody dies after contact with the police, that there is an investigation. That is what happened here, and it went further. Obviously, there will be many, many people who are upset about the outcome. There was a lot of upset and anger following Chris Kaba's fatal shooting, and we'll see that expressed at the protest today.
Those protests today mirror scenes from 2 years ago, when activists and well-known figures took to the streets. For some, this judgment only underlines issues that go beyond the 3-week trial. With more demonstrations planned, this could be a sign of things to come.
And Shingi Mararike is at New Scotland Yard tonight. Shingi, we saw the anger in your report. What do Chris Kaba's family and their supporters want to happen now?
Well, Barbara, after a 3-week trial and under 4 hours of deliberations, we got that verdict, and the minute that happened, it felt like it was about much more than the courtroom and what played out there, because we had political figures walking a tightrope trying to talk about the pressures on police officers like Martin Blake and split-second decisions, but also sending their commiserations to the family and trying to quell community concerns. And those community concerns have already reared their head in the form of those hundreds of protesters outside of the Old Bailey who are calling for the judgment to be reversed, saying that the system has failed them, but also calling for wholesale changes to policing in this country and wholesale changes to the way that police officers are held accountable or taken to trial after cases like this. And as I say in my report, that is a sign of things to come, because we understand that this weekend, not too far from here, on Saturday, Chris Kaba's family, alongside other bereaved families, will be delivering a letter to the Prime Minister, to Downing Street, asking for justice to be done.
Shingi Mararike at New Scotland Yard. Shingi, thank you. The Prime Minister has told NHS staff and the public that the government wants to hear from them first before it introduces reforms to the health service. Now, it means that any reform will not be in place until April at the earliest. That's 10 months on from Labour's election win. The reason, according to one respected health expert we spoke to, the plans for reform probably haven't yet even been written. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, reports.
Hello, tell me exactly what's happened.
A 999 emergency centre. Cool heads, a clear plan, knowing what to do. But what when the emergency system itself is broken? For months, these two say they've been prepping an answer in lockstep. Money, and lots of it, now coming in the budget. But what does it amount to? They're now going to spend months asking the public.
We want to hear from you and from as wide a number of people as possible, both in the NHS and people who are using the NHS, because this needs to be the once-in-a-generation opportunity for you to put your fingerprints on the future, literally to craft the service that you are working for. Put your ideas down.
Until now, we've been told money is tight. But next week, the NHS will be the big winner in the budget. But are they sure how this cash will help?
A year ago, you said there is no route out of the crisis in the NHS that simply requires spending more money.
That's right.
You talk a lot, as you have done today, about moving treatments to the community. But where in the community? Treatments done by whom? Paid for by whom? You're getting this money now. This is money without reform.
I suppose you could say, well, you should just come in and impose your view of change. I'd just say to people, be careful what you wish for. The last time a new health secretary came in after a general election where their party won power, that was Andrew Lansley, the Conservatives, after 2010, who came down with a massive top-down reorganisation that nobody voted for, nobody wanted, cost billions and set the NHS up to fail. So I make no apology, actually. In fact, I think it is a good thing when you have a government that comes in with a very clear reform plan but says, we're going to involve people in it.
You yourself have said that you've got to fix social care to fix the NHS, to free up more beds. Does the money that you're expecting from the Chancellor next week include the cost of fixing social care?
So we're not going to fix the crisis in the NHS and social care overnight or even in a single budget.
Public opinion.
Experts still waiting for detail.
Did Wes Streeting walk into the health department with anything more than a slogan?
At this point in time, could I describe to you in detail how each of those major shifts of reform are going to happen, how the health service will look different in 10 years' time? Until the plan's written, and I don't think it is written, we don't know.
During the election campaign, Labour told us that public services that want more money must be ready to reform. Now that Rachel Reeves seems prepared to splash the cash next week, is the blueprint to overhaul public services really fit for purpose?
A huge gamble from a Chancellor to spend so much so soon. She has much to prove. Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, on the streets of one Midlands city today, we heard plenty of prescriptions for treating the NHS. More staff and more money was a regular refrain, while one man who waited years for an operation told us he believed a two-tier system where some people pay is the inevitable result. Our communities correspondent Becky Johnson reports now from Wolverhampton.
Do you have any allergies, please?
No. This isn't a GP surgery, it's a pharmacy, but the pressure on the NHS is being felt here. Many of the people coming in for COVID jabs struggled to book in with their doctor.
The number of people I've seen here who come and complain that, oh, I wanted an appointment with the GP, but I didn't get an appointment, so I was sent here. It's just ridiculous.
Patients collecting prescriptions here in Wolverhampton all had views on what the NHS needs to get better.
More staff. Probably more money. I think there will be a two-tier system where people who are able to pay will pay.
More stricter management, not for doctors, but for the whole everything else that involves.
A lot need more staff. Then it's the wages that come with it. People are not happy with the wages, with the work they have to do.
Wolverhampton is one of the places where improving healthcare is critical. Almost a third of working-age adults aren't working. Robert's been signed off sick for 2 years. He has epilepsy and it's affecting his mental health.
You can understand why it's frustration because they just haven't got the staff.
Would you pay for appointments if that would get you in quicker?
If it got me in quicker, then I had the money there and I was working, yeah, 100%.
Across the city, we found stories of frustration.
I've just had a hernia operation. I've waited 8 years.
If you could tell the government to do one thing to make it better, what would it be?
More money invested in it.
Sylvia waited 9 hours in A&E last week when she cut her leg.
I phoned my doctors up this morning. They couldn't get me in to have the dressing changed for a fortnight.
But at this urgent walk-in centre, she got it done within an hour.
I think it needs to be go overall.
The government says feedback from patients and staff will help shape the NHS of the future. Busy mum Sanjana says being able to book appointments online would make her life easier.
On the calls, it's too much waiting time. There's so much queues.
All agree reform is key to get the NHS back on its feet for the next generation. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Wolverhampton.
The King faced a demand to give back the bones and skulls of the ancestors of Australia's Indigenous people today. He was heckled by a senator of Aboriginal descent who accused the monarch of genocide. Tonight, Sir Keir Starmer said King Charles was an incredible ambassador and doing a fantastic job. From Australia, our royal correspondent Laura Bundock reports.
A didgeridoo declared his arrival. This was the King's keynote moment, a long-planned set-piece speech. But no one saw this coming as he finished.
Give us our land back! Give us what you stole from us! Our bones, our skulls, our babies!
Senator Lydia Thorpe shouting at the King. She is an Aboriginal politician and an outspoken campaigner for Indigenous rights.
I did it for truth-telling, global truth-telling about the royals who caused so much devastation to not only our people in this country, but Indigenous people around the world.
As security took her away, the King talked quietly with the Prime Minister. The very start of his speech moments earlier had mentioned Indigenous Australians.
In my many visits to Australia, I have witnessed the courage and hope that have guided the nation's long and sometimes difficult journey towards reconciliation.
But the scars of colonial rule are still raw. Indigenous elder Auntie Serena Williams, who gave the King a traditional welcome, says he should say sorry.
Do you think the King should apologise for the colonial wrongs?
I think he should. I think, we all have roles and responsibilities, and I have roles and responsibilities to my people, and I think an apology would be beautiful.
It was supposed to be a day remembered for moments like this. The military, the ceremony, the national monuments. What happened inside Parliament was uncomfortable and confronting for the King, and a reminder reconciliation for Australia's painful past is difficult and divisive. Their disrupted day ended quietly, but both saw and heard how Australia is haunted by its history. Laura Bundock, Sky News, Canberra.
Breaking news from Lebanon tonight, where the health ministry says 4 people, including a child, have been killed by an Israeli airstrike near Beirut's main government-run hospital. More than 20 people have been wounded. And earlier, Israel said it had killed another senior Hezbollah figure. The militant group's head of money transfers was understood to have been the target of a strike in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Let's look where else Israel has been striking Lebanon and Gaza. Over the past 24 hours, the Israel Defense Force has launched airstrikes on targets in the eastern Bekaa Valley, as well as near Beirut's airport and in the southern town of Tebnin. In Gaza, the strikes at the weekend in Beit Lahia and the Jabalia refugee camp were followed up by footage of Israeli soldiers appearing to round up men and separate them from women and children. While the Israeli military continues its operations inside Gaza, some of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's ultra-nationalist supporters are focusing on what they want to happen after the war. Until 2005, there were Israeli settlements across Gaza, mainly in the south of the territory. The International Court of Justice found that occupation was illegal. But as Sky's Adam Parsons reports now from near Kibbutz Be'eri, a couple of miles away from Gaza, there are some Israelis who hope to resettle there.
From this field, you can see Gaza on the horizon, a shattered landscape. But these people would all like to go and live there. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel. But what of the Palestinians who live in Gaza now? Most we spoke to suggested they should be expelled, but some here were even more extreme.
I just think we need to kill them, every one of them, and that's it. And if not that, because the country will not let that happen, the government. Just the least we can do is just kick them out of our land, because this is our home, this is our land, and we deserve it.
Settling Gaza was once a fringe idea, but now it's suddenly mainstream. The National Security Minister was here, telling the crowd that it was the moral and correct solution.
The truth is that this is the most moral, the most correct solution, not under force.
But this, perhaps the biggest draw, a woman who spent 50 years urging people to seize land and settle in the West Bank. She told me Gaza could be occupied even while soldiers were still fighting. How do you imagine the war will end to let you live in Gaza?
While the war is continuing, we will fill the areas that were liberated with Jewish community.
Across the neighbouring field, a counter-protest from people who see the mere idea of settling in Gaza as repellent, inflammatory and worryingly popular.
It's no one's right and it's no one's duty, and what they're doing is illegal. What they're doing is A, illegal, B, it's going to cause incredible problems.
The people gathering here say it would be a privilege, a right, even a duty to settle in Gaza. We spoke to a couple with 3 young children who said they were excited at the prospect. But as we spoke, you could hear the thud of shelling. Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Israel's focus was trained on Jabalia in northern Gaza. Here, people have been rounded up, men separated from women and children. Israel says it is offering them safe passage, that hundreds have already gone. But as they were leaving, more airstrikes hit this cursed town. The people of Jabalia, like so many across Gaza, feel besieged and battered. And yet, just across the border, there are others who are desperate to move in. Adam Parsons, Sky News, near the Israel-Gaza border.
A woman who threw a milkshake at Nigel Farage has pleaded guilty to assault by beating and criminal damage. It happened outside a pub in Clacton-on-Sea a month before the election, which saw Mr Farage become the local MP. Victoria Thomas-Bowen had initially planned to fight the charges at trial, but changed her plea before proceedings began. The 25-year-old was granted unconditional bail ahead of her sentencing. Miss Bowen, seen here in sunglasses and an olive green top, narrowly missed a face-to-face encounter with Nigel Farage as both arrived at Westminster Magistrates Court this morning. A former nursing boss has apologised to families of Lucy Letby's victims. Giving evidence at the Thirlwell inquiry into Letby's crimes, Anne Murphy conceded that action should have been taken sooner when concerns were raised. Letby is serving a whole life sentence for murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 7 more at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Moldova only has a population of around 3 million people, but today they only just sent a defiant message to their much bigger neighbour, Russia. Despite allegations of Russian meddling on an unprecedented scale, the country voted yes in a referendum to put it on a path to joining the European Union. The result is a critical juncture in the struggle between Moscow and the West for influence in the former Soviet state. It could scarcely have been closer. 50.46% yes, 49.54% no. It was mainly this handful of central regions, shaded green, that voted in favour. And as our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins reports now from the capital Chisinau, tensions between the rival sides are high.
The morning after the night before in Moldova, and politics is playing high. I'm categorically against the European Union. Why do we need it? The European Union means war. Look at what's happening in Ukraine, says Dmitry. But before he's even finished talking to us, a fight breaks out behind. On one side, pro-Europe, on the other, against. Moldovans had been voting in an EU referendum marred by allegations of Russian meddling. A nail-biting count, which the Yes camp won by a razor-thin majority. Claiming victory in a far calmer manner, the pro-European president, who warned foreign forces, had tried to derail democracy.
It's normal to have people who have different views. What's not normal is to have a situation where criminal groups are bribing voters.
Maya Sandu didn't name Moscow, but police previously accused pro-Russian groups of spending millions of dollars trying to buy the vote and spread disinformation. The Kremlin's denied involvement, but first-time voter Magdalena is in no doubt. The voting process was clearly influenced by Russia. There was lots of attempts to bribe people, she says, adding she's worried the super close result could spark unrest. The EU says this vote was hit by unprecedented interference from Russia. But regardless, large pockets of people in the north and south voted against closer ties with Europe.
Is more than divided, it's very fragmented, because even if you analyze the vote yes or the vote no, you'll find many groups with different arguments why did it. So there are different groups, which is even more dangerous than just a simple polarization.
A vote that was meant to finally settle a question on Moldova's future has instead sparked uncertainty and confusion, creating division rather than unity. Moldova may be a step closer to the EU, but the path ahead is far from clear. Leaders must now heal the divisions inside the country and block interference from abroad. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Chisinau.
And finally, we want to tell you a little bit about our US election coverage. And in the lead up to the 5th of November, our teams have been finding and telling stories that shape the race for the White House, including the tale of a museum of presidential busts that's gone bust. Now, these statues of the heads of American presidents, from George Washington to George W. Bush, once sat in a 10-acre park and museum in Williamsburg, Virginia. Now, it went bankrupt, and since 2013, the sculptures have been sitting in a nearby farm, increasingly in a state of disrepair. And the reminder that we'll have full rolling coverage of the US election on the 5th of November and through the night as the results come in. The team includes my colleagues Mark Austin and Yalda Hakim, with Mark Stone and Lewis Goodall. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the political editors of The Sun and The Guardian, Harry Cole and Pippa Creer. And among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Metro about tonight's top story here on Sky. The headline, gun cop cleared of murder. We'll be right back.